Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road, where my guest today is president of Huntington University, where we're filming, Dr. Sherilyn Emberton. Dr. Emberton has been a friend of mine since she first set foot in Indiana to accept this presidency, and I have just been amazed by her entrepreneurial spirit and her leadership. She has an amazing story, and she has cast an incredible vision for Huntington University that you will not want to miss. Sherilyn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for asking me, and I am thrilled you led with that I'm your good friend.
Well, you are. I was one of the first people to meet you when you came to Indiana.
Absolutely. You introduced me to Duprin's chocolate, and I owe about 10 pounds to you. So just saying.
It's so hard to stay away from once you've tasted it.
Amazing.
Taste and see that the Lord is good.
Absolutely.
Well, you are one of the most entrepreneurial college presidents on the planet, in my opinion. And I really would like to unpack today where that came from and how that has shown up in all aspects of your life. So I'd like to start with you growing up in Texas. Can you talk about your family environment and your journey in the faith?
Sure. I had great parents. Loved them both. My father passed about 13 years ago. Seems like yesterday. But they were young and first generation college and jobs and lived in a little suburb house, just everything that you would envision the 60s being. Very faithful in church, made sure we were there, made sure they did all the things to tee us up right. And I think for that generation, that was very important. So I am very privileged to have that. I'm also privileged to have been with, my mom was one of the few women that I know of in the 50s that actually got a master's degree in economics.
Oh my.
Because she did, it was very difficult for her to get a job. She had to go and change the major back to business in order to be employed. Just different times.
Yeah.
But she had that drive in her. She went on to be the first regional economic development board member for women in Texas in that area. Mom was just always pushing the needle, but never very career-minded. Just would see something, wanted to be a part of it, and be involved. My dad, on the other hand, was, I think, the business person. He always was thinking about businesses, doing businesses. He created a lot of things, but I think the thing I remember the most is I was about 13, and I remember it like yesterday. I'm sitting in front of the television. It's probably a Saturday morning, just vegging out like kids still do today. And he walks in and announces to all of us that we're going to start a band. And that sounds great, except not one of us, other than he, paid an instrument. So he buys the instrument, basically assigns us, and we form a band, and we end up actually touring. And
Are you kidding?
Yeah, we had a blast. It was really, really fun.
Oh,
but I
goodness.
think that, more than anything, taught me how to meet people, engage with people, think beyond. Met a lot of really cool people as a youngster, and was able to say, you know, I really like that about that person, I really like that about that person. And because of the kind of music we played, it was bluegrass music. People were doctors, lawyers, bakers, diesel mechanics. They were all different kinds of people. So I was very privileged to have a life where I got to do some pretty unique things. And I think I never saw the challenges maybe that other people see, because it was kind of limitless to me.
How do you know in high school where it looks like you're headed educationally speaking? Were there some interests that you had?
I don't think there were interests that I had. I think there were models that I saw, people I admired and respected. I tell this to my students all the time so they won't be discouraged and will be able to look beyond a grade or look beyond a class. I was a business major initially in college, and by the luck of the draw, the only math class that was open was trigonometry. But because I was naive and didn't understand that trigonometry was just an elective math class, I actually made a C, maybe at midterm, and dropped business as a major, because I thought if I can't do one of the classes in it, I probably can't. So that sounds, but I'm telling you, that's what I thought. And so stepping back, and I've laughed about that a lot, I went on and majored in kinesiology at that time, which is a study of movement, because my father was a coach and a kinesiology instructor. So he was my model. I wanted to be like him. It started out as mom, couldn't pass trigonometry. Years later, I owned 4 businesses at that time, maybe in my late 20s. I began to acquire a few businesses. And the whole thing, I was supposed to be a business person,
Yeah.
but I had to go through that other period to exhaust that. So I try to use that to encourage students to not be put off if they're not successful in a class. Step back, what does that mean? And get more advice than what I took.
That's beautiful.
That was just funny.
At what point do you coach high school girls basketball?
That was kind of the defining. I've used this a lot in my testimony. Sometimes the Lord gives you exactly what you desire, so you'll dump it. And that's what he did to me.
Really?
Again, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to try to be the best. That is an innate feature of mine. I don't know why. I wish I wasn't so much that way sometimes. But I wanted to be a basketball coach. I interviewed for 2 or 3 jobs. The one job that I interviewed, there was only one other candidate. They offered it to her, and she turned it down. So I got to be the coach. Now, the flip side of that is I played her that first year, and my team beat her team 50 points.
There we go.
But it doesn't matter. That was my start. I coached 4 years, great kids, a very small town, like a caution light, and that's it. All they did was play basketball. We won the state championship in 4 years. I was probably the youngest female at that time that had ever won a state championship. But the minute I won it, I was done with it.
Really? Tell me why.
Because I'm telling you, God gave me the desire of my heart so that he could move me where I needed to be.
Wow.
It was it. It was almost instantaneous.
Was there a moment in time, a lot of people grow up in Christian homes, will just say, I've always been a Christian. Was there a moment in time where you felt you can look back on and say, that's when I surrendered my life to Christ?
Oh, absolutely. At 8 years old, I remember walking the aisle. As a Baptist, you walk those aisles a lot. And I walked that aisle, and it was a really cognitive decision for me, even at 8 years old. It was not an emotional or a deep spiritual movement. I'm hearing the pastor's saying, basically heaven or hell. And at 8 years old, I'm thinking, who wants to go to hell?
That's right.
Nobody.
That's right.
And, and I remember my mom just having the big one out there that we had talked about it, we had discussed it, but it was very clear in my mind. Same trajectory I'm sure a lot of people go through. I'm 14, 15, sitting in a camp somewhere, and the first time I really began to understand the concept of I'm a sinner. Okay? That's different. That's different than I want to go to heaven. And realizing that I need a Savior to do that. But I will tell you the defining moment for me was probably, after I had won the championship and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and I was actually sitting in a car waiting for someone to come out of a revival. And God didn't literally speak to me, but he spoke to me in my spirit and said, okay, aren't you tired of this? And I thought he was talking about basketball. Yeah, I'm tired of it. But he wasn't. He said, aren't you tired of this? Because you have your spiritual life here, you have your professional life here, and you have your personal life here. And they butt up against each other really nicely, but there's no overlap. Aren't you tired of that? Aren't you tired of saying that you follow Christ, but your life doesn't live it? Aren't you just sick of that? And I thought, what are you doing picking on me? I'm doing all these good things. I'm a good kid. I do. But he was right. And I will tell you, Mitch, that from that moment on, I was never the same. I didn't even desire those things anymore that didn't honor him.
Wow.
It was, again, he's like that with me. Once we're done, we're done. And I was done. And then he began to be able to do something with my life.
That is really cool. So your undergrad was at Stephen F. Austin?
It was. Master's too.
And now let's get into those business enterprises, because it's interesting that he has that conversation with you, and then a lot of this entrepreneurial stuff takes place immediately.
Okay, I went to real estate school in the summer with a friend of mine whose husband was determined that she was going to do something. He didn't necessarily want her to work. He just wanted her to have some skills so that she could do something, which was a terrible thing at the time. But I felt sorry for her, and she said, you got to go with me because I always start things and I don't finish. And I said, well, I'm telling you, if we do it, I'm finishing and you are too. Well, halfway through, she drops out, but I finished the real estate program. It's like 4 classes or something. And I ended up being a partner in a property management business, and then purchased a real estate business and purchased an apartment locator service, and then ended up with a partnership in a restaurant, which I shouldn't have done.
Which career did you tell your dad would be easy? Did you tell him the rest?
Oh, no, the restaurant. I remember sitting down with him. He was in the floor playing the guitar, and I said, Dad, I've just bought an interest in this restaurant. And he said, well, who's going to run it? I said, it's easy, Dad. It runs itself. He laughed uncontrollably. And he was right. It was a nightmare.
So how in the world does God get you to start thinking about higher education?
I'll be honest with you. It started with it was probably early 90s. And many of the churches are beginning to think of what would it look like for us to play in the space of K through 12. And your children went to a private opportunity, a faith-based opportunity. I'd never been exposed to that. I didn't really know, but it intrigued me. I had a teacher's license. I had a little bit of disposable income at that time, and how could I get involved at the church? And I realized that the more I got involved, the more it became clear to me that someone in our group needed a standard of educational training that would bless this opportunity. So somebody said, well, somebody needs to get a terminal degree. And I thought to myself, that doesn't sound too good, a terminal degree. And I realized that was a doctorate. And I thought, well, how hard can that be? You know, it's always, it runs itself. How hard can that be? So I go to school, and I'm helping start this one. And I was privileged
This is Texas A&M?
Yeah.
Okay.
I go to Texas A&M and work on my doctorate. And while I'm there and I finish, I get a call from a friend of mine who's working at LeTourneau University, which is a primarily engineering aeronautical science school in Texas, faith-based.
R.G. LeTourneau made equipment?
Earth-moving. 70% of the earth-moving equipment in World War II had a fourth-grade education. He and Ma LeTourneau established that school, and their desire was that men returning from World War II would work a couple of days in the factory and go to school a couple of days. And she originally cooked for all the boys.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, long story, it was great opportunity, but I didn't really know if I wanted, I didn't know I wanted to make a career out of it. I was doing okay, just kind of doing a little bit of this and that. But when I really fully understood the faith integration component, I said, well, okay, you need someone entrepreneurial and innovative to move the needle for you. They were one girl to every 7 boys. They had a significant market problem. Great programs, weren't attracting female students at all. Wanted me to come in, take the lead here, and then I began to introduce some other programs for them. And that kind of started that entrepreneurial mindset. And what I found, and I encourage young people today this too, as you're pitching these ideas and people have glazed over eyes, you can't let that deter you.
Yeah.
So we started one program with 32 students, and in 2 years we had 900 students.
Oh my goodness, what was that?
It was one day a month they came and did like lab practice teaching, and the rest was online for teacher certification. That was back when we had a huge teacher shortage in Texas. And so that allowed me to pitch the next idea to them, which they said, why do you want to start another program? You're already doing so good with that one. I'm thinking, don't you understand product cycle? You know, I mean, I'm trying to talk all this business, and they're going. So I realized then that maybe there was a voice in Christian higher ed for someone that said, let's step back, think outside the box.
So what was next?
We did, that program actually grew larger. It grew to 1,000 in 1 year. It was a
Oh my goodness.
accelerated program for people who were already working in the schools, or maybe they had a little college degree and wanted teacher licensure. And so we moved those people through. And so those were paraprofessionals, moved them through, great need. These are people that started college, always intended to be a teacher, couldn't, or maybe they didn't realize till post-degree that they really wanted to be a teacher. So it was a great opportunity. And we really moved the needle there.
So when you look at a business, you see innovative ways on how we can do more, how we can do things differently, how this will work better. That's probably constantly going on in your mind.
I try to. I do. Of course, when you are the innovator and your only job at the table is to innovate, it's much different when you're also the balcony CEO that has to, it's very different.
Yeah, that's true. That's really a good insight. So what was next after LeTourneau?
Well, I'm sitting there and I feel like I'm being groomed to be, I was the first dean, female dean at LeTourneau, obviously, and then was moved into an associate VP role. And I thought I was being groomed for the vice president for academic affairs, and I thought, that's great. I'm in business, you're supposed to move up. And he came into my office one day and said, I know that you had been thinking that this position would be yours. He said, I'm not saying it won't, but it's not going to be anytime soon. He said, my retirement is not doing nearly as well as it was, and I'm going to be here longer. So you probably need to think about your future. And I thought, well, I've never thought about my future. I've always thought about, let's do this, let's do that. But for the first time, I thought, if I am actually this can be my profession, maybe I do. So I looked at a lot of different opportunities, and there were 26 jobs open in the United States for a chief academic officer at that time, and not very many probably that were ready for a woman in that role. And so I went and visited a school in Tennessee, and this is how God and I always do this. I say, God, I'm going to take the job if they offer it to me. So if you don't want it, you slam the door, you stick a nail through it, and I will understand I'm not going to get that job. And I said, the deal is if they offer it me before I leave campus, I'm taking it. I don't care how much they pay. I don't care. I'm taking this job.
Wow.
So I show up. I had a great interview. This school was beautiful. They were going to start a medical school, all this creative stuff, which I would have loved. But she didn't offer me the job. So I'm leaving the door, going out, and I'm thinking, well, it was great, wasn't for me. She calls me back in the office, not kidding, and says, I've decided I don't need to wait with this job. I thought, oh, Lord, I've already told you I'm taking it. So I did, and it was fabulous for the time and the purpose.
Really?
And I want to tell you how God used it. I was there 3 years. In those 3 years, we started a medical school, we started a law school, we started their first doctorate, and there were a big group of us. It certainly wasn't just me, but I got to help lead the efforts, go through the accreditation, do all of that, do the performance for it. But at the end of that time, this was a private, not faith-based college. However, in their board materials, like 50% of the board had to be believing Christians, and they prayed, but it wasn't a faith-integrated institution. And I remember about the third year, God saying to me, you can sit here, and I might even make you president here someday, but what you got? What are you going to be president of? I said, I'm going to be president of the university. What are you talking about, Lord? He said, yeah, you can. I'll give it to you. But what for? I said, I'm not getting any glory. No glory here. And I said, Lord, how could you let me taste of it, but you don't mean for me to? And a friend of mine was vice president at East Texas Baptist University in Marshall, Texas. Now, understand at that time there were no females at any kind of senior leadership, except for one college I can think of. So I tell him, I'm not even applying unless you go and ask that president if he'll hire a woman. And he comes back and he says, yeah, he'll hire you. So we have a conversation. I meet with him. I love him. He was a vice president at Baylor, first presidency. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll let you walk every step with me. I'll let you see every failing, every success. I promise I'll do whatever I can to help you. I will try to find you a presidency, which at that time I just thought, okay. And he said, I'll pay you less than you make now, and I'll work you harder. And he did. He paid me $20,000 less.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was the hardest job I ever had in my life.
Oh, my goodness.
But I went to a denominational school, a small school, who was needing to change their paradigm. Okay, so freeze frame that. That's the president that I served under went to a conference, met Blair Dowden. I think Blair had a chance to share this vacancy. My president comes back and says, I think I'm going to nominate you for something. I said, yeah, And I get a call, and it's a faith-based institution, which I'd never done, a denominational institution, which I'd never done before, which is why I went to ETBU, that opportunity. It was a small college. I'd never done a small college before. So I had the experience from ETBU. And it was absolutely teed up for a new leader that needed to look at some new things.
At Huntington University.
Yeah.
I've been friends with some of the board members for a long time,
Sure.
and their perspective of you was powerful. It's like...
They were probably scared. What are you talking about?
Well, yeah, you're a change agent.
I don't know what I...
So let's talk about what'd you do your first year here that was different from the past, and how did that change go over?
Well, I tried to build on the past. Dr. Habecker, who was 2 presidents before I came, was the great builder. He was able to take much of the Miralat, both of them were alive at the time, and build the physical infrastructure of the campus. Dr. Dowden came in, 22 years of incredible service, took the college to university status, had built a name for the university in some respects. My job was to come in and move it programmatically. And I walked in the door with the board chair telling me we just voted to go to Arizona. We don't know what that's going to look like, but you're the girl to take us there. Go west, young woman. So I had a lot of opportunity initially. Some folks on our campus had done some preliminary work. There were some key leaders on our campus that had done some work on the opportunity in Rendalia with occupational therapy. So my job was to come in and to help them, support them, but make it happen. And we were very fortunate to establish both.
That's awesome. And
yeah.
you I think at one of the first chapels, did you get up and give every student your cell phone number?
I still do.
You still do that?
Yeah, I always do that.
That's really cool. You started the agricultural program
I
here.
did.
How did that unfold?
It was fun. Agriculture, for an outsider, I'd never seen large-scale production ag. I didn't even know what it was. But flying into that airport in Fort Wayne and seeing those acres, and then getting here and understanding not only do we have a strong crop, but we have a strong animal opportunity, especially in Northeast Indiana. And so I knew I hit a sweet spot.
And it's just been a tremendous success.
It's been great. We just were in the Zoning and Planning Commission last night getting approval to put our new Don Strauss Animal Science Center on campus. It's going to be phenomenal, 10,000 square feet. It's great.
That's terrific.
We're so excited.
The Peoria, Arizona campus is film and what else?
It's film, animation, it has graphic design, and all of those we have now full-time people that are doing that work. And then we are doing a little bit in sports management, sports media, trying to figure out how that interconnects, and we'll continue to look at that and those opportunities.
And you started the MBA program too?
Well, I worked with the team that started the MBA, yes. I think honestly, that and our occupational therapy was the dime changer for us. We went from a baccalaureate degree offering institution to a doctoral level. And that's when the awareness of people stepped up and went, wow, that's true mission, and you're able to actually do it at the doctoral level. We had the accreditors on campus today for our bachelor's prepared occupational therapy assistant. So that was exciting. We would be the first in the country.
Wow.
At the baccalaureate level. So we're going through that today, and it was exciting.
Way to go.
Yeah. Well, it's a great campus, and there are so many creative and innovative people on this campus. But the timing and Dr. Dowden has served 22 years and had done a yeoman's work, establishing it as a university, and then moving the bar in that direction. And so it was my job to come in and just keep developing the footprint. And the team was here, and we've collected some people along the way that are amazing to go with them. So it's been very successful. And part of it, you see the fruit here, the DMA program was a game changer for this institution, and it is in Arizona as well.
That's what brought
Have you
Mike
not
Kelsey
been
here.
there yet?
No, I think we should go.
You are such a slacker. Why haven't you been there?
I love Scottsdale. I think we need to go.
It is amazing. It is amazing.
I need to take my Haley. She needs to see it.
I don't know how to describe it other than when you really drop down and focus on what you're so passionate about, and then Christ is at the center of that. That's a combination that is rock star.
You're an amazing leader.
It's amazing that I am a leader, if I take that personally.
How would you summarize your leadership philosophy?
Growing and changing. I have had so many wonderful people speak into my life and so many distinct experiences. Each of them prepared me to realize that leadership is all about scraping off what you think you know so that there's room for what you don't know to grow on that. I've learned a lot at this institution. I've learned a lot about Midwestern work ethic. I've learned a lot about the importance of a strong faith that's lasted a test of time. I've learned, how many times have we reinvented industries just in our region? And so that has inspired me to help think about how can we continue to make Christian higher education relevant? I sit in an amazing oasis of Christian higher education institutions, which is hard when you're trying to get a competitive advantage, but it's also a blessing to see how God has, He's raised up some powerful people from those roots. And so I'm still learning from them and learning from the things that work. And then what I try to do is shake that up a little bit with a little Texas interest. But I've also inherited some long-serving people here at this institution who have helped me to grow and understand how to be successful here.
That's awesome. You're a blessing to our community. I also want to thank you for all you've done. My Kelsey loves you to pieces. My son-in-law, Zach, loves you to pieces.
Kelsey, I'm still calling her on a regular basis.
I love it.
Telling her what we need to do.
I love it. You're probably the number one influence in her life.
She's a great kid.
So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all you're doing in the middle of a big capital campaign. All kinds of improvements and changes happen on campus.
Well, we're very blessed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, Jesus said, if you want to lead, don't lord it over others like our culture tells you to. But if you really want to lead, serve. And I think Sherilyn is a picture of that, a portrait of Christ expressing himself through her in that mode of humility and servant leadership. You know, 2,000 years later, our culture tells us the same thing. If you want to lead, you got to lord it over others. But when you start asking questions, listening, and understanding what's going on in those around you, then you can make a much wiser choice and provide a pathway for where you want to go and what you want to accomplish. I would just encourage you to spend some time with God today and ask him, like Sherilyn did, hey, what do you want me to do with my life? And you may have some strong ideas on where he's leading you. And it may be that you think you're there now, but ask him. Just give God a clean canvas and say, hey, God, what do you want me to do with my life that maybe isn't taking place right now? Because what he wants to do is he wants to align his heart, his kingdom, in every single thing that you do. So it might be starting a new nonprofit. It might be redirecting the business that you own to accomplish kingdom purposes. It might be a radical change and moving from coast to coast. But seek God and find out what that is. And you can trust him to lead you, to guide you, and to shape your heart to be like his.
I'm Ernie Bodrap. Join us next week on Restoration Road.
Go Saints!